Hi, this is John Mayall, and you are listening to Icon Sets.
Welcome to Icon Fetch, the web's premier music interview show. Now, here's your host, Tony Peters.
Welcome to Icon Fetch. I am Tony Peters. Dennis Coffey is truly one of the unsung heroes of the guitar. In the late 60s, he became a member of the famed Funk Brothers, the backing musicians that played on virtually all the Motown hit singles. His unique style can be heard on Ball of Confusion by the Temptations, War by Edwin Starr, and Someday We'll Be Together by the Supremes, just to name a few. In fact, we could spend the entire length of this show listing all the great tunes that Coffey has played on. He also had a solo career, scoring the million-selling instrumental Scorpio in 1971. Resonance Records, usually known for their excellent jazz releases, is ready to issue Hot Coffee in the D, Burnin at Morey Baker's Showplace Lounge, a previously unheard live album from 1968 featuring Coffey on guitar, plus Lyman Woodard on organ and Melvin Davis on drums. And to talk about it, we welcome in Dennis Coffey. Dennis, how are you, man? Good to talk to you.
Pretty good, man. Good to talk to you.
Now, so tell me about this. How does such a great recording like this remain in the archives for over 50 years?
Well, you know what? Back in the early days, Mike Theodore and I were producing things, and so we recorded this live, and we tried to get it out, but at that point we were pretty much nobodies, and nobody was interested as well. So I just happened to have these tapes in my basement. Okay, I had 7 reels of 4-track tapes, because at the time we hired a studio engineer to come down to Morey Baker's and record the band live. And they sat in the basement, and I had been trying to get somebody interested in a CD of James Jamerson. I was trying to help Annie out. In fact, Annie and the Jamerson family were down at the club last night. We were just packed. So the labels couldn't use that, but then I sent them a CD. Mike Theodore and I had 6 of the songs of this project here, and they liked it. So what we had to do is I had to take those tapes, and Bob Becker at Pack 3 Studios here, he had to bake them to keep, before you can play them, because the coating will fall off because they're so old.
Right, yeah.
So he baked them and then converted them to high-end digital, and I sent them out to Resonance Records. And what's interesting is that those 7 reels of half-inch tapes fit on a thumb drive. Digital.
Oh, man, isn't that crazy?
The technology, So anyways, they took, Resonance Records took that material, and there's enough in there for 2 CDs or more. So anyways, they put together the 1 CD, and they're very excited about the project, and said, "Hey, Mike, we're back in the game again. What the heck?"
Right.
So
right.
Out.
No, that's awesome. Now, when's the last time you actually heard, you had these in your basement, but,
Right.
You didn't want to play them because they'd fall apart, so when's the last time you actually heard this stuff?
Well, you know what? Mike Theodore had created when he was living in New Jersey, because he was part owner of a studio back, a while back. So he had converted some of that stuff and actually did a CD of 6 songs. So
okay.
Those songs I could hear.
Okay, all right. So you knew you were sitting on something pretty special then, I think.
We always liked it, but then we always do, because we work very hard to record the best things that we can do. So we're always, very positive about what we do. And an example of the Rodriguez stuff.
Sugar man, won't you hurry? 'Cause I'm tired of these scenes.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, when that came out, no one was interested, and then look at it now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's, a lot of people can find out about that, the Searching for Sugarman documentary, which was, a huge success. And, here you have this guy, and you played on the first Rodriguez album, right?
I did, because with Rodriguez, he was so shy, because when we first saw him, he was singing Facing the Wall.
Oh, man. Wow.
So we got him a deal, and he was so shy at the time that we took him in the studio and recorded the first 4 songs with him and his guitar. And then we came back later, and I put guitar and I played bass on it and did some stuff. And then eventually, he could do it with a whole band in the studio. But those first 4 songs, we had to build a band around him.
Well, I mean, couldn't it be said that if you live long enough that eventually you get your due? I mean, isn't it crazy that, this guy you produced back that, sold like almost no copies in America, Rodriguez stuff,
Yes.
Here it is, he becomes a big deal in South Africa. And then, you get this great documentary. I mean, it's just, and things just kind of have a weird way of working out that way. I don't know.
Yeah, when Malik, the guy who was responsible for putting that documentary together, called me one day and said, "Hey, I'm so-and-so from Sweden, and I'm doing this documentary on Rodriguez. Could you help us out? We'd like you to be in it." And he showed up with he had an assistant with doing the lighting, and he brought this very hip camera over to my house. So he did some footage there, and I said, well, you know what? I can talk to John Colbert at Baker's because they're closed on Monday. So I got them to actually open up Baker's Keyboard Lounge, and he did some of the footage there as well.
Nice.
Yeah, then a year later he called me and says, well, I want to do some more voiceovers, and came over to my house again. And to me, who would think that this guy was so great at what he did and his point of view that he put in this Rodriguez film was just amazing. Who would imagine that? Just
right.
A regular guy,
Yeah, absolutely. So back to the new Hot Coffee and the D collection here. This was not, I mean, a lot of times you get these, live recordings from, years ago, and it's like a single mic, it's an audience recording. No, this was done professionally, right?
Yes, we had a recording engineer come in, and he did the mic placement, but there's only 3 guys, organ and drums and myself. And whatever he did, he did his thing. I was just focused on playing, so, and that was the outcome of Brian Dombrowski was the engineer that did that.
Nice. Now, what can you tell me about Morey Baker's? Was this like a big room? How many people would this have seated?
You know what? I'm thinking maybe about 60. It was a piano bar.
Okay, all right.
And so we had been playing at the Frolic Show Bar, and the guy wouldn't give us a raise over time, so we got, so we quit.
Right.
So we auditioned at Morey Baker's, which is oddly enough a mile and a half down the road from Baker's Keyboard. And it was a piano bar in back, so we actually put the band up where the piano used to be, and you could walk in, and we were against the far back wall, and but people could see us because it was an elevated stage, for the piano bar thing. And we auditioned and got the gig, and then that was it. It was a very upscale type of place, there were judges and entertainment people, and you could see luxury cars in the parking lot and that kind of thing. So it was a very hip room at that time.
Right, and in the liner notes, you talk about how this gave you kind of the freedom, that you had grown tired. You had done like the cover band kind of thing, and you were tired of playing, just strictly, pop music and other people's music kind of thing. And Morey's gave you a chance to kind of stretch out a little bit.
Well, that started at the Frolic when I first joined Lyman Woodard and Melvin Davis. Don was giving me this guitar player, Don Davis, was on that gig, and he invited me down to sit in. So Mike Theodore and I went down there, and I had heard them before there, and so I sat in. And then Don says, I'm leaving the band, and the people really dug me when I sat in. And to me, that's the first time I was in a place where they were playing jazz and R&B, and it was no dancing. The people were sitting there listening to what the guys were doing. I said, man, this is great. So that gig paid $20 a night. I was making $20 an hour doing sessions, but I said, I don't care. I'll take it 4 nights a week.
Right.
That's how it all started.
Doing something you love. Now, the guys at Resonance always do such a great job of the packaging. You know, it kind of flies, and everybody, a lot of people are, streaming music and downloading music, and Resonance is great because it's like it's pretty much saying, hey, if you really want this full experience, you need to buy the physical package of this. It's like a 56-page booklet. I mean, that to be able to look at that, you got to be proud of that. That's got to be.
Yes, absolutely. And the vinyl sold out on the first morning, completely. Bam, it's gone. Numbered vinyl copies sold out the first morning nationally.
Nice. Yeah, that was part of Record Store Day. That's right, they did that. So yeah.
And it's funny because that was the beginning, the way we played. Because every time we played at any club, Lyman, Melvin, and I, we would do the basic song, but then it would just organically turn into whatever it did on any given night. I'm doing the same thing now. Last night, James Jamerson family was down there, and all his family, and the place was packed to the gills, and they were all fans, and it was just rocking. And I got some great musicians here, and it's the same thing. We don't play any song the same way twice, and the people were just really, egging us on, and it was just rocking all night, and I had so much fun. I said, wow, I sold some books and stuff and everything else, and it was just a great crowd. It's like I'm still using that same principle. I mean, just get up there and do the songs, but the breakdowns and solos, whatever they're going to be, and the grooves can be whatever, and we're off.
That's amazing. And I mean, really, you talk about in the liner notes how the three of you guys did not rehearse this stuff. Like,
Never did.
Wow. So, I mean, if we talk about the leadoff song, Fuzz. Was that something that, like, you had a riff that you worked on at home, or was it just totally spontaneous? It just came out that night? Where did that come from?
We were just, Lyman and myself would work on a few songs and some chord changes, and I'd add some melodies to it on the gig. We didn't prepare for anything. And that's just how it came out on that particular night, and it seems like a kind of a loose melody line that I was putting in there. And that's just how we did it. We never rehearsed, and if I wanted to learn a new song, I'd learn the song and I'd write a chord sheet for Lyman, and we'd just count it off, and Melvin would put something in, and we'd be off.
Wow, that's great. Now, you also do some very familiar songs, but you do them in a very different way. Like, like take, for instance, By the Time I Get to Phoenix. Was that something, again, you would kind of work on at home and write out the chord changes kind of thing and then hand it to the guys?
Yeah, I always did that where I'd, like Casanova, the same thing. I think I actually played on the original R&B record of Casanova. So, I would get the records, or it was interesting. One time we opened up for the MC5 at the Grande Ballroom here, which was the big psychedelic place that all the English groups played in as well. And I started off with A Day in the Life by the Beatles for the West Montgomery version.
Wow.
And the place went nuts, these young kids, because they connected the Beatles right away with and I was kind of doing the West Montgomery version because he had put that on one of his records. But that's how it kind of ran. Whatever, Maiden Voyage, I just learned the record, write out the chords, and hand it to Lyman, and I'd count it off, and we'd go.
So, yeah, let's talk about that. I mean, that's the other one that kind of sticks out as being really different, the Herbie Hancock tune, Maiden Voyage. I mean, here you have, I don't know, you may not be able to name another album that has The Look of Love and Maiden Voyage on the same record,
That's true. I mean, it was so, and we're still doing the same kind of stuff today, and what I used to do at Morey Baker's, we were on that piano bar, and I bought a strobe light. And so what would happen is we'd be in the middle of a song, or at a high point in the song, and Melvin would flick off the light switch, and the whole place would go dark, and I'd had a foot switch for the strobe light, and I'd throw that thing on, and I'll tell you what, it was crazy then. People would be looking at us doing psychedelic funk in a strobe light, and they never seen a strobe light. That crowd, they didn't know what the hell was going on. So it was just like bam, it was really wild.
That's amazing. So you mentioned that you had tapes of this. Is it possible there could be a volume 2? Is there enough material for a number 2 of this?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably more than that.
Okay. Wow. Nice.
But
nice.
I haven't heard those songs. I heard them once we got them down to digital.
Okay.
But yeah, there's at least 2.
Nice. Now, if we go back here, you're a kid from Detroit. How did you get to playing guitar?
My mom told me, because her side of the family is very musical. I had my cousin Marilyn could sit down and read and play Beethoven's sonata. At 14, she could play it.
Wow.
My mom could do all this stuff, and so my mom could play piano and sing a little bit, and my aunts, her sisters, 2 of her sisters could play. They played all kinds of stuff. I had one of my mom's sisters, my Aunt Aunie, sat down at the piano at 96 and played a ragtime piece with no mistakes.
Wow. Okay, you got the talent in the family then.
Yeah. And my mom told me I could name every song on the radio when I was about 2.
Nice.
But it didn't come. I had the passion, but the mechanics of learning how to play and that whole stuff was just blood, sweat, and tears. It was not like, I'll just grab this here guitar and tomorrow I'll be able to do something. I took lessons. I took some piano lessons. I took some guitar lessons from teachers who had no idea what I wanted to do, so it wasn't really working. And then the light went on. I used to go up to the Upper Peninsula here in Michigan, and my 2 cousins, Marilyn and Jim Thompson, were playing country and western. And they showed me some chords on a few songs, the Hank Williams things, and I learned a couple songs in the 2 weeks I was up there in the summer. And then I knew I could do this. And then I just learned country songs off of records, and learned some chords, and I took lessons from anybody who would teach me that knew more than I did. So I did all that stuff, and I used to sit. It was interesting. I used to go to the Drome Lounge in West Montgomery for a shit town. I mean, he was blowing all the guitar players away, and I just heard Wes, and I said, "Oh my God, the jazz stuff is really worth looking at." And so I used to hang out with Wes, not realizing down the road he and I would be on the same label, because they did that One Night in India on Wes, and they got another album on him.
Yeah.
So
oh yeah, the Resonance guys have definitely dug into the West Montgomery archives.
Yeah, and he was my favorite jazz guitarist, and I got to know Wes, and I used to hang around with him. Every time he come to town, I'd sit right in the front row, and he was playing at a piano bar too. Very cool. Nice.
Now, some of these, if you dig into, you've got a fabulous book that you wrote several years ago called Guitar Bars and Motown Superstars, and you it's just a dizzying amount of different bands and different people that you played with. Like early on in your career, you were in a band called the Royal Tones, right? That was kind of like early rock and roll stuff.
Yes, but even before that, if you go on YouTube right now and look up a song called I'm Gone by Vic Gallen, you'll hear me doing my first record date and getting paid at the age of 15.
Wow. Okay, that goes way back. All right.
2 guitar solos on there that I'm doing. That's rockabilly stuff.
Nice. Okay, so you got that. And then, you did sessions for people like Del Shannon, right?
I did. And it was actually Bob Babbitt on bass and Marcus Terry on drums and myself. George Kazakis was part of the Royal Tones back then, too, and the Popoff Twins. And then we had some different folks. But mainly Del Shannon used myself on drums and Babbitt on guitar, and Marcus Terry on drums and Bob Babbitt on bass. And we used to go to Bell Sound in New York and record for Del.
Nice. Now, if we fast forward quite a bit, how did you get involved with the Motown label? I know you had done sessions for all kinds of different labels and different artists in the Detroit area. How did that call come from Motown to become one of the Funk Brothers?
Well, it was very interesting because I announced this last night to Annie Jamerson and Penny and Joey, Jamerson's family who were there. And actually, I got a call from Jamerson. He called me up and said, we talked because I had done a session with him. He was sneaking out doing a session, so he knew me there, knew me in the clubs. And he introduced me to Hank Crosby. And Hank Crosby was Stevie Wonder's producer, and he was a contractor for all the musicians at Motown. So Hank says, look, they had since bought Golden World. I used to do a lot of sessions at Golden World, J.J. Barnes and Edwin Starr and all those guys. And upstairs at Golden World, we've got a rehearsal place, and we're going to do this thing called Producer's Workshop, and we're going to offer 2.5 hours, 4 nights a week. I think it was from 7 to 9:30, a chance for producers to come and experiment, and it'll be off the clock. They won't be paying union scale, they won't be recording, and they won't be paying studio time. So that was the idea, and it'll be Jamerson's band. And so they said, we'll give you X amount a week to be in this band. I said, okay. So I started doing that, and some of the producers started trickling in and experimenting and stuff. They'd bring in some charts because Motown had excellent arrangers. And one day, Norman Whitfield came in. And I used to see Norman Whitfield when I used to back up Motown acts at the 20 grand and stuff. He'd always be coming into clubs, always, he's real savvy on what's going on in the streets, And he brought in this song called Cloud 9 and put the chart in front of me, and I just happened to have this wah-wah pedal in my kit there, and I pulled it out and I just put it on that intro, and Norman heard it. He said, that's it. He said, that's what I'm looking for.
Wow, wow.
Norman he kind of turned the direction of Motown from his perspective, like 190 degrees or whatever, because he was in tune to what's going on in the streets. So all the protest songs and the psychedelic stuff and George Clinton and all that, which, I played with George Clinton, I Want to Testify, one of his first hits, and then I was on the first Funkadelic album as well. But so that's what Norman wanted to do, and he found I was his guy that could help him do that, because I was bringing out all the gimmicks and the Echoplex and all that fuzz tone and all that stuff. So once I did the Cloud 9, that was it. 2 weeks I was doing it with the Temptations, and then Norman had me over there all the time working on attempts, and then all his other acts, and then the other producers started using me. And I don't think people really understand what we did at Motown and how it operated. As we got there at 10 o'clock in the morning, we'd sit in front of a master arrangement charts, all the parts were on it, and we were expected to read the charts correctly, and usually had the producer and the arranger there, and then add a few licks and get a great feel and do all that. And we had to do one song an hour, make it a hit, and if you made one mistake, they had to stop the tape and start over again.
Wow, one song in an hour. That's crazy.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and they would have to stop the tape if we made a mistake. So there were usually about 11 of us in the room. But that was our job, and we did at least 3 songs in one 3-hour session. Then I'd take an hour for lunch and come back. I'd do 3 more songs in 3-hour session. Then I'd go to the producer's workshop for 2.5 hours. And then by 10 o'clock at night, I'm over at the Holland, Dozier and Holland studio doing all the Hot Wax and Invictus stuff. So it was fun.
Wow,
I wasn't doing that. I was playing with Lyman and Melvin, and I was producing with Mike Theodore, so it was great.
It was busy time. So
yes.
So let's flash forward a little bit with your solo hit single. You hit the top 10 with Scorpio. Now, after playing behind so many musicians, did that really kind of, you were a veteran guy. This wasn't new. You weren't new to the business at all. What was it like to suddenly have this, big success, number 1 in Detroit, and you've got this top 10 single, U.S. kind of thing?
Well, what was good about it is the idea came to me for Detroit Guitar Band, because Mike Theodore and I were just writing arrangements. We'd get a score pad over at his house in Highland Park, and we'd be writing arrangements for horns and strings. We might have 20 strings on something and 8 horns and a whole rhythm section, and we would put it on a score pad, and then we would hire a copyist to make it legible for the musicians. So we just did all this stuff. So I just got the idea. When the Sound on Sound tape recorder came out, I think by Sony, and Les Paul, I got to play with Les, and he's the one that created that Sound and Sound stuff. He was just so great at that. So I just said, what happens if I write guitar parts like they were horns and strings?
Nice.
So I wrote 10 songs, and using Sound on Sound, I added guitars with fuzz and all this stuff. So it sounded kind of like horns and strings, and I played that stuff for Mike Theodore. I says, here's what I want to do. And at the time, I had done my first album, Hair and Things, Avon, and so Mike sold Clarence on doing that album. And Clarence says, "Yeah, I like the idea." So he put up the money and all that stuff, and that's how it started, you know. And then, what was interesting, I had the Funk Brothers on the album. They were my friends, and they weren't supposed to work outside of Motown. But I didn't use the guitar guys because I played rhythm guitar when we did the Scorpio, and Jamerson couldn't do it. They were kind of watching him pretty close now. But Bob Babbitt was my friend from the Royal Tones, and he was doing a few sessions at Motown. So, you know, so I said, well, I'll use Bob. And I used the drummers. I used Uriel and Pistol on drums. I used Earl Van Dyke on keyboards. I used Jack Ashford on tambourine and Bongo Eddie on congas, and me on guitar and Bob Babbitt on bass. And I did that breakdown because I learned the breakdown stuff, especially the way Norman Whitfield did the breakdown. So I just says, we're going to put a breakdown right here. And when we got time where I wanted to break down, I just says, break it down. And the way the guys went, and then Babbitt jumped up with this great bass solo, and the guys are joking around in the background. And the whole idea was Mike Theodore had left the overhead mic on, and we're mixing the song down in New York at RCA, and he says, what are all them voices? What's going on with that? And then Mike says, you know what? Let's leave those voices on. And that's Bongo Eddie and Jack Ashford yelling in the background and making comments and stuff. And that's how that thing happened.
Nice. Now, when you say you were kind of layering guitars, how many guitars are on Scorpio?
I've got 9 guitars on the melody.
9?
I took a friend of mine, Joe Podorczyk, who owned a music studio. And he also he taught Ted Nugent how to play.
Really?
And Ray Manette from Rare Earth, because Mike and I had done a project on Rare Earth when they were the Sunliners. So, anyways, Ray Manette from Rare Earth, myself, and Joe Podorczyk, and I wrote charts out like it was a horn section. So I wrote 3 parts, you know, the 3 of us, and overdubbed it 3 different times. So, and I used fourths in the harmony. So I got 9 guitars playing the melody in Scorpio. That's
awesome. And I mean, that's just one of those that it doesn't sound like anything else, even to this day. I mean, it's just
No. And you know who first heard that is when that album was getting ready to be released. Quincy Jones heard it because Clarence Avant wanted his opinion, and Quincy Jones told him that song Scorpio will be a hit.
Wow. Hey, that's a good endorsement. So.
Yeah. And then when I did playing on the Body Heat album for Quincy Jones when I lived in L.A., he reminded me of that, you know, and I'm saying to myself, wow, you know, well he's such a amazing producer and talent anyways, but that's the kind of ear Quincy had.
Right. Yeah. It's great set of ears. That's definitely probably the best in the business. And I mean, it's great. You talk about the fact that you've kind of come full circle. Here you are. You've got a weekly gig that you're doing at Northern Lights Lounge, right? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah. It's in Midtown Detroit. I've been there 7 years. It'll be my 8th year here in another couple weeks.
Wow.
And then nowadays, that's unheard of for a musician to have a house gig like that lasts that long.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah.
In old school, what we used to do is when I was with the Royal Tones, is we would work a place for a year or 2 years, 6 nights a week, and never have to take our amplifier down.
Yeah. Well,
now it's all changed. These young guys got to lug a PA, and they got to get one-nighters, and they all have to have day jobs, and the whole thing is just turned topsy-turvy. It's very hard on musicians.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and you know, you talk about the fact that recordings, you know, I don't know anybody's making money off of recordings anymore these days.
I know, you know, and someone like myself having a record deal, everybody's looking at me, what? And then last night, Michael Solakis, the owner of Northern Lights Lounge, and boy, he had a big smile on his face. It was so crowded last night. He says, man, I said, well, I do Twitter, and I got X amount of Facebook friends, and I got Google AdWords, and I got a website. He says, man, it's amazing. He says, it's amazing. So
Yep.
It's very cool.
Well, but it sounds like you're doing the right thing. You know what I mean? It's like you got to embrace the new technology and, use it for your own good kind of thing. So.
Yeah, well, my son Dennis Jr., my oldest son, he worked for 2 years at Google headquarters in Ann Arbor, so he really understands how that process works.
Nice. Well, that certainly helps. So, all right, Dennis. Well, it's been great talking to you. The new CD from Dennis Coffey is called "Hot Coffee in the D" from Resonance Records. And what would be best? You got a website, right?
Yeah, it's Dennis Coffey, SITE.com.
DennisCoffeeSite.com. Got it. Okay. Awesome. Well, good luck on it, and thanks for talking to us.
Thanks, Tony.
You've been listening to Icon Fetch with Tony Peters. Want more great interviews? Head over to iconfetch.com. There, you'll find every interview we've ever done, plus CD reviews, This Day in Music, and a random album of the day. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter. Who is Tony going to interview next? It could be you. Send what you've got to Tony Peters. Icon Fetch, P.O. Box 292134, Dayton, Ohio 45429. Or email Tony at host@iconfetch.com. Until next time, this is Joe Kelly. Have a great day.